3 years ago, I just graduated high school. I had so much guilt stored in me because all throughout high school, I was a super ambitious kid who had such big dreams to achieve these big goals, but I was too scared to keep going because I would take a leap. I would take a first initial step. And then, for example, I tell some of my friends about this, and a lot of times the people closest to me, they either got jealous of me, they started hating me, and eventually I lost motivation doing what I initially had planned. And one of those things actually was school. I had big dreams of getting into the top universities when I was in high school. That was a big goal of mine, right? And there were a few semesters, because we were on the semester system, where I'd actually do well because I pushed myself to do well, and I started off the semester very well, and I wanted to keep that streak going because otherwise I felt like I wasted it all for nothing. But there were also those other semesters where I got bogged down, and all of a sudden my surroundings started to affect me mentally, and I started to lose some of that motivation and discipline I had previously, which held me back from being the person I wanted to be. And I knew I had a lot of potential. I knew that I was different from everyone else around me, but I just couldn't show it. You know what I mean? I was just, hey, look, I have all this potential, and I'd show it for like a few weeks, and then I'd lose motivation. And it was all because of this one reason, but to find out what it is, we gotta start with the beginning of my high school year. So, as a freshman in high school, I was involved in many things. I played football, wrestling, karate, I did piano, I had a great friend group, and I was taking the typical class a typical 6th grader in our school would take. And although it seemed busy on paper, I definitely had a lot of free time where I could allocate it towards studying for school or pursuing any of my goals, but I didn't. Instead, I spent that time playing video games or scrolling to social media. A big regret I had back then, because during that moment I was letting all of these fears stop me, because I wanted to start creating content, I wanted to start creating software, I wanted to pursue all of these dreams I had, but I didn't, because I had all of these fears from other people attaching to me, where it was kind of paralyzing me from pursuing what I wanted to do. So instead I felt guilty, and I'd always scroll and play video games. And so then sophomore year came along, and I remember during the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I was very guilty. I was like, hey Ben, you have so much potential. You have all of these goals of getting into these top universities, yet you constantly play video games and you expect yourself to be here where all of the top students are at, yet you're being this average student and you're spending all of this time being unproductive and not spending it towards school. And I realized, and I was so mad. I remember that summer, I was so mad. So I actually asked my parents, hey, could you sign me up for math enrichment camp? And they said, sure. So I ended up going to math enrichment, and I skipped a math class, which counted towards my transcript when I was applying to colleges. So then sophomore year came along, right? The first semester of sophomore year, my grades went up. They started to do better. And I was like, hallelujah, everything's going well. And then
COVID-19, the disease that defined our lives in 2020.
School got canceled, and with that, I lost a lot of my motivation. So, mind you, before school got canceled, I had basically all A's on the transcript, but then our school switched to pass or fail, and all of a sudden I had all of these stuff in my head going on, and I couldn't control it back then because I didn't know how. Looking back at it, although it was a tough time, I think it was a crucial time in my development. So when COVID came along, I all of a sudden became super socially anxious. I became very isolated. I was borderline depressed. I don't like to use depression, but I was borderline depressed. And that was a big thing that happened to me during COVID. I'd spend every single day walking with my mom on this hike. And, I have a great mom. I ended up becoming so much wiser and better from these hikes that I've learned so much about myself, which ended up helping me later on in life in so many ways. But junior year came along, right? So I ended off sophomore year with all passes, of course, because we had pass or fail. We had no grade system our second semester of sophomore year. And junior year, if for all you high school students in the United States, I don't know about Australia, UK, or other countries, but for the United States, junior year is the most important year of your high school year, because if you want to apply to universities your senior year, they're mainly checking your sophomore and junior year grades. Now, my second semester of sophomore year, I got all passes, but there were no grades, right? So this was my moment to prove myself. But then came along the first semester, and I decided to take 5 APs during my junior year because it was all online, and I thought that it would be easier online, which it was. But the problem was that I was that still average kid that I was from freshman year. I wasn't that kid that pushed myself my sophomore year of high school and that actually kept up with these goals. Instead, I remember I had this small sprint towards the beginning of that first semester of junior year, and then it died off. I just lost motivation and I didn't push through. And I remember I ended off the junior year with very average grades my first semester. And I knew after that first semester of junior year, my hopes for the top universities I wanted to get into were gone. And it was a hard moment. It was a very difficult moment because now my schedule was not as busy as it was before. You know, I had much more free time. School was online, but instead of allocating my time towards school, I'd spend a lot of my time playing video games. And I was very depressed, but I still didn't know how to control my head. So that was my problem, which I will talk about later on. And second semester came along. It was better, but you know, my hopes for a top university were kind of gone after that first semester of junior year. And of course, you know, senior year, I came back. I was around my friends again, which were the same friends I had for the freshman year and the beginning of sophomore year. Senior year doesn't matter as much, so we had a lot of fun, and it was a good time up until college acceptances came. And you know, I got into 8 universities, so I was happy about that, but I didn't get into a single university that was my dream goal, and I was really bummed. And not only that, but I had aspirations of creating my own startups, creating software, creating content, and doing all of these cool things, which never ended up coming true because I spent all of my time playing video games. But that was the moment that changed. I used to watch a lot of Ninja relating to Fortnite. I used to watch vloggers, David Dobrik and Logan Paul. And then my feed all of a sudden switched to all self-improvement. Now, I realized YouTube was a big distraction for me, and that was probably my main social media, but I went on this self-improvement journey. I knew that I needed to change, and the only way for me to change was to actually push myself to change. Because I knew that all of my motivations of, oh, I want to become famous, or oh, I want to become rich, were all very temporary, and you won't be motivated every single day to do what you want to do. So one thing I've learned after high school is that I need to push myself a little. And that's actually when community college kicks in. And I only have 1 year in community college before I transfer to a university. So I might as well push myself to work harder to achieve these goals I have in mind, to get into the top universities I want to get into. And so I did, and I ended up achieving my goal. But that main lesson I've learned from my time in community college is that I need to push myself, because you know, I still had a lot of these demons, so-called, that I had from junior year of high school, but I learned that a lot of these demons are fake and not real, especially if I'm overthinking them. What I need to do is I need to prioritize what matters to me more, and by prioritize I mean actually do and focus. So I realized that school was more important for me than these thoughts, because school was gonna get me towards achieving my goal. These thoughts were just temporary. They're so temporary that they don't really matter. And the more you occupy yourself with what you're doing, like for example, during that time I was focusing on school and I was also learning about software, but the more you occupy yourself with what you're doing, the less of these thoughts you're going to have in your mind. And that was an important lesson I've learned during my community college and during my junior year of high school that actually prompted me to push myself that extra mile to achieve this goal that I had in mind of getting into a top university. Now, I got into a top university, but during that summer of that same year, right before I went to university, I had a goal of earning my first dollar bill online off of software. So I went on this journey and I started to create all of these software projects, right? I remember I created my first software project, it flunked. I created my second software project, it flunked. I created my third software project, it flunked. And then finally in September, right before I was about to leave for UCLA, for university, I created my fourth software project, and that one spiked up. And I was like, holy crap, I have all this potential. And that happened only like after a few weeks of launching it. So I realized that all of this hidden talent I had, which I wasn't using in high school before, that I have right now in college. And I started to learn all these skills. And of course, from then on, I went on this upward trajectory. And to be honest, it only took me 1 or 2 years to completely change myself as a person. And I didn't realize it, but although that junior year was a depressing, sad, miserable year of my life, where all of my hopes and dreams kind of seemed to wipe away, I learned this one great lesson of controlling my mind. And I feel like, although sometimes we have these hard moments, I really like this quote that life happens for us. So I was always this ambitious person that wanted to achieve these great things and had these great goals, but I had to go through this junior year of high school of building myself back up, learning about my mind in order to excel later on. And in community college, I had to learn the lesson of pushing myself even when it was hard, even when people were making fun of me for my goals, even when some people completely lost faith in me, or even after I transferred to UCLA and started to earn some money where people were jealous of me. I had to learn these things of constantly using that as fuel and pushing myself instead of letting that back me out of what I wanted to do. It's crazy how you can literally change your life within a matter of months. Because that's what happened to me. If you just put in that work and stay consistent, because most people are not consistent, most people don't show up every day. If you're willing to show up every day, you can achieve anything.